Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us at Findmypast. We're so glad you could be with us. My name is Jen Baldwin. I'm the Data Acquisition Manager for North America for Findmypast, and I'm excited to talk to you today about some opportunities that might help you cross the pond. We're going to talk about that all-important, and for many of us, kind of the penultimate discovery in our family history research, and that is, where did our ancestors come from? Findmypast is absolutely committed to helping you cross the pond and get back to your British and Irish heritage. And with that in mind, I wanted to walk through a handful of record sets that you may not have discovered before, and you may not have tried to see if you can find your ancestor. Now, many of us have looked in the very common places, right? Census records, naturalization files, citizenship papers, but our clues to the origins of our ancestors' location may be hidden in a record set you have not considered yet. So let's show you a few of those examples and give you some best practices as to how you might cross the pond. I'm going to share my screen so we can show you some of those examples. And hopefully some of these will inspire you to do a little bit of research today. I'm going to start with one that's actually really near and dear to my own heart because it was one that I discovered about my ancestor a few years ago. And it's one of the records that I actually waited to tell my father about until I could look at his face and actually see his expression, because it's just such an amazing document and I wanted to be there when I showed it to him. And that document comes from the Registers of Licenses to Pass Beyond the Seas, which covers 1573 to 1677. Now, that is a very early period for North American history in terms of Western settlement and white settlement. But it is an essential part of the collection at Findmypast. It's a beautiful record set. We were really, really fortunate to be able to digitize the original records that are held at the National Archives in Kew. And it's actually, as a result, part of our British record set. Now, you may be thinking, well, wait a second, what about reasonably exhaustive research, Jen? What about doing everything you can in the United States first or in Canada first before you try to actually cross the pond? And that's true. And that's definitely something that you want to try and attempt to do. It makes the most sense in terms of your research. But let's be honest, genealogy is fun, and sometimes it's great just to see some old records like this. Now, I knew for a very long time that my ancestor, Henry Collins, which is who you're looking at on this page, was actually on this voyage. I knew for some time that he traveled on the Abigail in 1635. Thanks to a handful of published works and transcriptions and indexes, I had been able to identify that information. But there is something very different about seeing a document like this and reading that in a book, right? And so that was one of the reasons why this document struck me the way it did. It's just seeing the old script handwriting, seeing the ink on the page. Now, on this document, we also get Henry Collins' 3 children and his wife, as well as a group of servants that came over with them. Henry is my 9th great-grandfather, and he's probably great-grandfather to many of you as well, because there's so many descendants from these early colonial settlers. But it's still an emotional connection, right? And it's telling the stories of our ancestors. Seeing a document like this actually showing that he had to get permission to travel, to make the voyage, to leave London. That is a kind of an incredible moment. And one other colonial era set that I want to share with you that I think is really important is actually the Early Immigration from Britain collection, which covers 1636 to 1815. And you'll note from that date range that it covers the American Revolution and the War of 1812. So a pretty important period in the history of our country and an important period in the history of immigration. Now, this collection largely points towards the islands, right? The Caribbean and Barbados, but it also covers most of the major ports along the eastern coast of the 13 original colonies. One of the things that makes this particular set different is that it is a much more of a list. So it's more of a passenger list that many of us would think of. It also talks and has a column specifically for the former residents of the passenger and their occupation. There's also a margin on the side where they would often make notes. And I was actually able to locate several examples of identified individuals who were traveled as indentured servants. So if you believe that you have an indentured servant in your family tree, you should definitely take a look at this record because it may indicate for you that that was indeed the case. And it may actually say this person is traveling in this way. There were whole voyages that were just indentured servants, and many of those are recorded in this record set. So if you have colonial period ancestors, you really want to make sure that you take a look at these two sets specifically. There's another collection that really covers kind of all time frames, but it is an essential one for all of us to utilize, and it's called Transatlantic Migration. The reason it's kind of such a generic title is because it's a series of published works, it's books, that have been digitized and made available through Findmypast. So in the example that you're seeing in front of you, it's a record, or a page actually, from a book called Scots in the American West. But don't let the title fool you. And I might say that a couple of times, because titles are designed for the website structure. They're not necessarily reflective of the entire scope of the collection. And we do the best we can, but sometimes it just doesn't work that way. So Scots in the American West sounds very much to us today like the American West, right? California, Nevada, Arizona, maybe Utah or Colorado. But if you look at the examples on this page, you see entries from California, Kansas, Texas, Illinois, Nebraska, all over. So anything kind of west of the Mississippi was game for this author, right? So put yourself into that context of, I need to look at every record set that could possibly cover my time frame and my area of interest, right? So if you have Scottish immigrants, you think they might have at some point settled west of the Mississippi, you want to definitely look at this particular title. Now, the easiest way to go about this actually is when you go to the Transatlantic Migration search page, you can actually just search all the publications at one time and search by name or location or date, at whatever your preference is, so that you can see all of the titles in this collection. It's much more than just this one book. Now, there's a variety of collections out there that are created for a lot of other purposes, right? I often joke about how we need to look at everything our ancestors might have left behind. And that includes record sets that were created by the government that may not have any direct impact on travel at all. Now, the one I'm going to show you next is the United States passport applications. And the reason for that is because it is travel related, but it's not necessarily immigration related or citizenship related, but it does have vital information on it. And vital information, birth, marriage, and death, can be really, really important in this attempt to try and locate our ancestors in the British and Irish areas. So even though this is for travel, it does have that important information. The example that you're looking at indicates the location of the applicant's birth and also the location of her father's birth. So just because the record set doesn't necessarily reflect that it's specific to immigration or to naturalization or where my ancestors came from, you should check it out anyway and make sure that you're looking at kind of everything, right? Leave no stone unturned. When we talk about vital records, it's important that we really do look at them all and make sure that we have birth and baptism, marriage, and death and burial for all of our earliest ancestors. That's really going to help in making sure that we understand where our people came from. Now, this particular record set is in partnership with the Historical Society of Pennsylvania, which is a relationship we're incredibly proud of. We've digitized hundreds, maybe millions of pages of their materials and their collection. And this example just shows one basic entry in their vital records collection that indicates that John Boyd was born in Ireland, and it's down there at the bottom of that screenshot, that clipping. He was born May 1st, 1758, and it talks about the information is really basic, right? Because this is a headstone transcription. But when you get into a situation on the East Coast or even back in the British Isles, you may find that the headstone is currently unreadable. So transcriptions like this one that were published in the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s can be really, really important. So make sure that you're looking at this collection for that kind of information. Now, again, don't be misled by the title. Early Pennsylvania Vital Records from the Historical Society of Pennsylvania really tells us it's going to be Pennsylvania focused, and it is. But they also have a huge amount of records from the other mid-Atlantic states. So a considerable amount from New Jersey. The collection gets up into New York, Maryland, and further south as well. So keep that in mind as you're researching through these collections. Don't just look at the location, look at the date range that the collection covers. Look at the potential opportunities, right? If you think your ancestor was in Pittsburgh versus Philadelphia, maybe it's worth it to look at the collection anyway, just to make sure that the collection doesn't span the entire state. Another really good example of vital records comes from our partners at the New England Historic and Geological Society, and that's their Massachusetts Vital Records to 1850 collection. Again, covers that really important time frame in American history that's sometimes very difficult to research, right? You have the earlier colonial period that's pretty heavily documented at this point, thanks to a lot of really good work from genealogists over time. But there's a period between the American Revolution and about 1840 when the census gets a little bit more detailed for us. It's really difficult. I tend to refer to it as kind of the black hole of American genealogy. And this record set and record sets like this will help you get through that period. In this particular example, you're seeing an individual, Zachary Taylor, find him on the page, he's about 4th line down, and his sister, who were actually both born in Canada. Now they're listed as members of their father's household in this particular record, and this is from Lynn, Massachusetts births, right? So what you're seeing is a journey, it's a path. When you create the timeline for this family, you now know that those 2 kids were born in Canada, and that means that they had a layover, if you want to put it in current context, right? They had a layover in Canada where they had at least 2 children, and that fills that gap. And understanding the timeline can be really, really crucial to making sure that you get back to the British Isles. Knowing kind of every step on the trip is important. It really helps you fill in those gaps. So make sure that you're looking at the siblings, the cousins, aunts and uncles, friends and neighbors, right? Utilizing fan research, friends, associates, and neighbors to really broaden your scope of research so that you can get the full picture and potentially the motivation for travel, which I think many of us are seeking. Now, we've talked so far about just North American records, and that's really important. It's important to do reasonably exhaustive research in the US or Canada before you try and cross the pond. But there are some records in our English material, right, in our Irish materials that are really, really helpful as well. So let's take a look at a couple of those examples. And we're going to continue on that thought of vital records. We're going to start with England and Wales non-conformist records. The marriages just happens to cover 1641 to 1885. And the reason I like this collection, in particular for immigration, is because so many of our ancestors came over as a result of religious persecution. And many of them were labeled as non-conformists in England and Wales. My own ancestors were in this category. And so some of these records actually are very basic, right? A very simple marriage entry, like you see at the top of this example. But then you get into some of these ministers that thought that this biographical information was really important to record. Let's take a closer look. This is a little bit of the story of Thomas Johnson and his wife, Hannah Willery. They were Moravians who married in Yorkshire. And the minister just felt like it was his duty. He was compelled to document all of this other information about occupations, his parents, his first wife, his second wife, children. It's an incredible amount of information. So if you believe that your ancestors may have been categorized as non-conformist, take a look at this record set and just see what's out there, right? Even if you just have a suspicion of where they might have been from, pull up the records from that county or that parish and see what happens. You may be surprised at what you find. Another record set that is religious-based and absolutely crucial to many of us is a project we're very proud of at Findmypast called the Catholic Heritage Archive. And this project actually spans North America and the British Isles. So we're hoping to capture those religious activities on both sides of the ocean. And you can see that often in these records. So we actually have sacramental registers from the Archdiocese of New York, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Cincinnati, and a variety of other smaller dioceses across the eastern United States. In addition, we have Catholic records from England and Wales, from Scotland, and all the Catholic records that are available from Ireland. And we're really, really proud of our Catholic collection. It's probably the best available today. The Irish records are, in fact, also free forever, which is fantastic. I was able to actually identify 3 generations of my Irish family in our Irish collection. So it's a really, really great record set to utilize if you think you have Irish Catholics. Now, I also use this record set for basically anybody who travels through one of these areas. So for example, I'm currently working on an ancestor who came in to the United States through New York in the 1820s, 1815, 1820, I think. And even though I don't think he was Catholic, I actually review these materials in the Catholic Heritage Archive just in case, right? What happens if he decided to get married and the only priest available was a Catholic priest? Or what happens if his wife was Catholic and I'm not aware of that, and they decide to marry into that particular faith and he joins the congregation, right? There's no indication in my other research that that is the case, but I'm going to check this record set every time we do new records just to make sure, because otherwise I may miss something really important. So we're going to actually zoom in on this image because there's a column in some of these parish registers that I think are really, really neat. Now, this actually comes from the Archdiocese of Baltimore. It's a page out of the St. James the Less Parish Register, and it's from 1872. But look at the column that I've highlighted there. It's actually specifically a column for place of birth. So it's not the parish they were born in, although that's labeled as well, but it's actually the location they were born. So there's lots of Baltimore, Marylands on this list, of course, but you also see Bavaria and other locations. It was a heavily German parish, but this gives you an opportunity to really research and identify kind of a place of origin from a religious record that you may not expect. So if you think Catholic at all in your family tree, make sure that you're looking at the Catholic Heritage Archive. Now, there's a lot to cover, and I could actually go on like this for another couple of hours. And what we identified at Findmypast is that crossing the pond is really difficult, right? Their voyage, our ancestors' voyage, was really hard. Finding them should not be that difficult. That's what we believe. And so as a result, a couple of years ago, we created a tool that will help us, help you and I, research our immigrant ancestors in a different way. And that's called the British and Irish Roots Collection. Essentially what we did is we took all of these different record sets and put them into one pot. And we gave you one search screen to search them all at one time. So it's 98 million records spanning over 400 years, and it continues to grow. We add to it consistently. It covers anyone leaving the UK or Ireland, specifically for the US, Canada, or the Caribbean. And it also covers anyone listed on any US or Canadian record with British or Irish origins, a birthplace, or parents who were born in the British Isles. So you may see a census record, the 1880 census, and it says that his father was born in England. That's going to be listed in British and Irish Roots. It may be a passenger list or a naturalization document or any one of the examples that I've shown you already. All of that can be found with one search. So this is what it looks like. You go to the page and you search through the collection with a very basic search setup, just like you're used to on Findmypast. When you get your results list back, it looks like this. And you see that there are a variety of collections listed. There's all these different data sets, right? I've got the Federal Census of 1871 Ontario Index at the very top. I've got California San Francisco passenger list. I've got New York passenger list, the US 1850 census. New Orleans is down at the bottom. So what I get is a cultivated list of all of these potential record sets that might indicate where my person that I'm searching for is from, where he journeyed from. When you click on the result, you'll get redirected to the actual collection that gives you all the details that you're looking for so that you can organize your research and create a research plan really based on the results of your search in British and Irish Roots. It's a fantastic tool, and I hope you'll get the chance to play around with it and let us know what you think. We would really appreciate your feedback on this particular set because I'm excited about it and I think it has real potential to help people get across the pond. So to summarize, a few things that we've talked about, a few things I really want to highlight, and then one other thing to share, right? Some key learnings. Collection titles can be misleading. So take advantage of every opportunity you have to research your time, place, your period, your person, right? I joke often that our ancestors probably wrote down their origins and their exact place of birth on like a cocktail napkin and then threw it away at the end of the party when the host cleaned up. Our job is to find the cocktail napkin in the garbage can and pull it back out and resurrect it, right? That's what we're looking for. Every little scrap of detail can be important in that journey to go back to our British and Irish roots. All the records in the world may indicate, any record in the world may indicate evidence of our ancestors' activities, the motivation for why they came. Maybe it was religious persecution, maybe it was economics, maybe it was war, famine. right? There's a variety of opportunities to research the circumstances, and that may help us pinpoint where they came from, and then of course why they made that decision. So again, just check everywhere. Every opportunity you have could be a potential research opportunity. When you're working in sites like Findmypast or other history and genealogy related websites, you want to make sure that you know and utilize their online catalog. At Findmypast, it's called the A to Z of record sets, and it's really important so that you make sure that you get every possible record set that you can find. Even if you're preparing for an off-site or an on-site research trip, right? Let's say you're preparing to go to an archive or a library for the first time. Take advantage of their index or their card catalog or their manuscript descriptions, whatever it is that they offer. Utilize that website and everything it's got for you in full before you make that trip so that you're well prepared when you go. You may even find that some of their record collection descriptions actually include information that you need. So take advantage of everything the site has to offer. And lastly, something we haven't touched on yet is to use the community, right? The family history community is fantastic. There are people all over the world who are searching for their origins. And there are people all over the world who know things that you might not. And in fact, you probably know something that someone else needs, right? Some piece of information that you've gathered along the way in your research process that would really help someone out. And as a result, there's an online community where people are talking and engaging and asking questions and helping people in a really meaningful way. Now, Findmypast obviously has a voice in this community, and we're really passionate about our family at Findmypast and our community members. And so we would like to invite you to join the Findmypast forum. You can find us on Facebook, and the link is on the screen. But it's just one example of the many ways in which the community is helping each other to learn and grow. You never know, your question may be answered through one of these forums. So join the group, search through the pages, search through the questions. You may find the answer that you're looking for, or you may find a second or third cousin, right? You just don't know what's going to happen. I hope that these suggestions and tips have been helpful to you, and I hope that you're just as excited about the record sets that I've shared as we are. We would love to be a part of your family history story. We would love to be a part of that journey and helping you find your immigrant story and your family's origins. If you have suggestions or feedback, let us know. We're always happy to talk to you. And you can reach us through Facebook or a variety of other social medias or at support@findmypast.com. Thank you so much for joining us today, and good luck in your journey. Take care of each other, take care of yourself, be safe, and we'll see you next time.